the station on your side. This is WAVY News 10.
All indications point to this being a historic hurricane.
From the President of the United States.
Prepare today. It will be too late to prepare tomorrow.
To the Governor of Virginia. All of us are bracing for a monster storm.
Worried about the hurricane coming a little bit too quick around the turn. Laid it over. Now the highway shut down. It's a nightmare.
We're on your side as we await the force of Hurricane Irene. And good evening, I'm Tom Shadd along with Alvita Yule. We're bringing you now the very latest on Hurricane Irene and its approach to the East Coast.
What we do know is the storm is definitely a fast-moving storm. We're asking everybody to please get ready now. Later may be way too late.
And we're also expecting torrential rains throughout much of Hampton Roads, up to 15 inches in some areas, along with hurricane-force winds throughout Hampton Roads.
Governor McDonald just spoke just a couple of minutes ago, and he definitely indicated this could be the most catastrophic weather event in some people's lifetime, which gives you some idea of what we may be up against. He's given us a lot of guidelines and a lot to follow. But before we even get into all of that, we're going to go to our Chief Meteorologist, Don Slater, who's standing by right now in the Supernapolitan Weather Center. Don, where are we in relation to the storm?
Well, it's starting to hit the Outer Banks, certainly in terms of some patches of heavy rain, but the bigger rain is on down a little bit farther southward, and that's going to be moving ashore here in the next several hours. Really, during the overnight hours, the rain will increase throughout the Outer Banks, and it's moving a little bit faster now. Last night, we expected the worst of the storm to hit pretty close to around midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. Now it looks like it's going to be closer to 8 o'clock in the evening. Now, that's going to be closer to the high tide time. Now, here's just to give you a point of reference, here's where we are. Here's where the storm is located, right on down into here. And a little bit different map to give you an idea of where everything is. 5 o'clock this afternoon. It's got 100-mile-an-hour winds. We're going to zoom in and set things into motion here and show you where everything is going to be. There's where it is Saturday morning early. In other words, late tonight. There's where it is tomorrow afternoon. 85-mile-an-hour winds. That's good news, believe it or not. It's a Category 1 storm at that point. So a little bit less of a storm. That's significantly good news because the earlier forecast models had it at about 100 miles an hour, even at that point, or 105 miles an hour. That was a Category 2, so now we're down to a Category 1, a strong Category 1. In the Hampton Roads area is really kind of on the good side of it as it moves on through. Now, we've got the forecast models here as well. There's one outlier way on out into here and one way on out into here. So this is the center line, and of course we shouldn't focus entirely on the center line, but chances are that's where things are going to be, right on into here. And it's been pretty steady Eddie now in terms of the past 18 hours of putting this right on in just through northeast North Carolina and then on out to sea. Now, the intensity models can be really kind of fuzzy. They can be really off. However, the forecast track models are generally pretty good. And this is a pretty tight cone now moving on through our area. And then from there on in, it of course moves on up into New England, the Canadian Maritime provinces, and moves away from our part of the world. So again, this is the expected track of the storm, and again, it looks like it's going to be a little earlier, hitting our area really during the evening hours. Now, here's where things are again: 2 o'clock in the morning, Category 1 storm, strong Category 1, 90-mile-an-hour winds. There's where it is Saturday afternoon, 85-mile-an-hour winds. So really, the Outer Banks, you're going to get raked over the coals for much of the day. Now, once it passes east of your area, the worst of the storm is going to be over. Now, at that point, along the Outer Banks, you're going to see it late tonight and through the first part of the day tomorrow. And I think by around 3, 4, things will start to improve there, but they'll really start to worsen as we move on up into Virginia and really the rest of northeast North Carolina. Saturday afternoon, again, 2 o'clock. This is for the Hampton Roads area. 85-mile-an-hour winds into the area. Category 1 storm. That's much better news. Now, for the Eastern Shore, that's better news as well. It's about 80 miles an hour right on into here. So again, Eastern Shore, you're looking a lot better with that situation. Now we move it to and show you what's going on. And again, with the cone the way it is, the uncertainty of the storm, if it moves right on up through here, that's a little bit of a worse situation. But with a weaker storm and very heavy rain with this, here's what we expect. And if it moves on out to sea, we've got much less of an effect in terms of wind and tidal flooding throughout the area. Now, again, that's what we've got going on. Here is a look at some of the cloud cover through the area, some of the lighter rain, but pockets of heavy rain already hitting the Outer Banks. And you note these clouds into here. What that shows is really they're high cirrus clouds in the upper end of the storm. And the storm at the bottom levels of the atmosphere is a low pressure area. And then up above, it's like a chimney. It's a high pressure area that evacuates everything on out. It's got to have air coming in and air coming out. Well, boom, here's the air coming out at the edges of it. And you can see some of that. Here's our future track computer model, 9 o'clock this evening. And it's looking pretty good in terms of its accuracy. And it agrees pretty much with the Hurricane Center in terms of what's going on. 20, 25 mile an hour winds, 30, 40 mile an hour winds tomorrow morning into the Hampton Roads area. Stronger winds across the Outer Banks. There's where things are through the day coming up for tomorrow. Now, it's a little slower than what the Hurricane Center has. Hurricane Center by 2 o'clock in the afternoon has it a little bit farther northward. But this is a pretty good picture to give you an idea of what's going on. This is heavy, heavy, steady, torrential tropical downpours. We're starting to see winds in the 50 to 65, 70 mile an hour wind range, 45 to 65. And then really starting to see some wind as it moves on in over the Chesapeake Bay. And you can see again by 9 o'clock in the evening. And then after that, again, it'll start to improve after midnight into the Hampton Roads area. You'll still get some strong winds out of the west, northwest, and then southwest right on down into here. And some of those winds, again, very, very strong even out of the southwest. But the threat of tidal flooding is going to start to be a bit better. We're going to start to ease on off on that certainly by Sunday morning throughout the area. One of the big things about this is the fact that, and then the winds by the end of the day Sunday, they're just gone. One of the biggest things that we're going to see about this is the fact that we'll see huge amounts of rain into the area. We could see 4, 5, 6, 7, a foot of rain or more into the area. We can see pockets of 12, 15 inches of rainfall throughout the area. Now, my colleague, Sergey Galindo, is mic'd up and ready to go, and we want to get her to jump in here and show you what's going on in terms of what we're going to see as far as effects of the storm. So I'm going to hand the remote to you. How's that?
All right.
We're live on the air. We've been busy. We're taking a look at what's going on into the region. We'll just kind of go through some of this stuff. Sergey?
That's right. Thank you so much, Don. Yeah, certainly looking at some very, very strong winds across the area, especially as you start to head down toward mainland Dare County. The Outer Banks, notice those wind speeds expected to be 75 to 90 miles per hour, which is better than the thoughts that we had earlier, especially with the storm weakening quite a bit. So some good news there, but still winds very strong. 65 to 85, you start heading toward Camden, Currituck counties, and you go further inland toward Paquimins, Pasquotank, Chowan County, 55 to 75 miles per hour. And of course, the further you move inland, we're talking from Hertford to Bertie to Northampton County, Halifax County, 45 to 55 miles per hour. Now, right along the water's edge, closer to the coastal areas from Virginia Beach to Chesapeake, 65 to 85 mile per hour winds, 75 to 90 as you head back around Back Bay and the southeastern portion of Virginia Beach. But the further you go inland toward Isle of Wight, Southampton County, 45 to 65 mile per hour winds. Again, moderate to major in terms of tighter flooding. And up on the peninsula, winds not quite as bad the further inland you go, but right along the bay, we're looking at winds 65 to 80 miles per hour. And at places like Hampton, maybe southern sections of Newport News, you go a little bit further, 64 westbound, and we're talking 50 to 75 miles per hour. Even further inland, 45 to 55 miles per hour. We expand that view out a bit and notice early, right before sunrise, this is when we're going to see the strongest winds around the eastern shore, 65 to 85 miles per hour, and then 45 to 70 as you get toward the middle peninsula and northern neck, so not so bad there. You can see some of those outer bands already wrapping in to portions of North Carolina and South Carolina, and Don will have more with that. Don?
Welcome back. Live team coverage of the arrival of Hurricane Irene to the East Coast, namely North Carolina and Hampton Roads.
We have coverage all over right about now. Andy Fox right now is in Nags Head. We're going to start with Andy. So Andy, you've already told us that the winds have already started picking up.
Yeah, they did, Alvina and Tom, and it just blew my script away. I mean, things are really starting to happen here. They've blown away. You can see that the surf behind me is really starting to pick up, too. This is the first time that we have seen a significant surf coming on. We still don't have any rain to speak of, so that's pretty much the situation here on the beach in Nags Head. Of course, Dare County, again, reminding people, The window of opportunity to leave Dare and Currituck counties is shrinking. Now is the time to go, but we found a lot of people who are planning to stay just right where they are. It's a day to stand on the beach and wonder about what's to come. Birds wondering that too. Irene still hasn't shown herself with the surf, but that guy's catching one. Look at that.
Probably be a little bigger than this, but could catch a couple.
You concerned about the hurricane?
Of course. I mean, everybody is, right?
This is going on all over the Outer Banks. People boarding up. This is Chuck with Outer Banks Glass.
Yes, sir.
You got a lot of business today.
We've done about 200 sheets of plywood since yesterday, and just the 3 or 4 guys we've got working today.
We just made plans to have dinner tonight with friends, all of the people that are staying.
Are you concerned?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Why are you staying?
Well, because when we left for Isabel, we couldn't get back onto the island for 3 or 4 days afterwards, and I figure this: it's a big storm. You'd have to drive to Tennessee to get out of it, and why be in a hotel with no power, no TV, no phone, no electricity, no air conditioning? We can do that here and take care of each other.
And that's an example, Tom and Alvita, of what people here on the Outer Banks, those are the kind of rationales that they're dealing with, whether to stay or whether to go. I can tell you, just in that 1-minute report there, the winds have really started to pick up again. This has been the real first gust of wind that we have had, although it's nothing compared to what we're about to get, and we're ready for it.
All right, we appreciate it. Of course, stay safe down there. Keep us posted. Thanks, Andy.
All right, we're going to keep going further up the coastline now. Next to Virginia Beach, our Ann McNamara standing by. You've been there now for the last couple of days. What's going on, Ann?
Well, Tom, this is supposed to be one of the most hardest hit areas, and you can't really tell if you look behind me. There's 2 very different feelings here in Virginia Beach today. On one side of the boardwalk toward the ocean, the one you see behind me, people relaxing, still spending the day on the beach, quite a few people. On the other side of the boardwalk, people are working their butts off. They're putting up boards, store owners making sure those stores are secure, the storefronts are, and if you take a walk down the Oceanfront Boulevard like I did earlier today, you'll see some eerily familiar names on those boards, on the storefronts. You'll see the name Felix, Bonnie, Isabel, and now Irene. Those in the line of Hurricane Irene.
Yeah, this was definitely last minute for us.
Are finding themselves in another line.
God, that is surprising, yes.
For the day's 5th shipment of generators.
Well, I hope my wife is strong enough to lift it into the house.
At the other end of the store, the other sought-after item.
We don't even have that many windows. So thought I'd get more, just to be safe.
177.75, please.
And that might be best, because he lives at Chicks Beach. Virginia Beach Boulevard starting to look abandoned. That is until you stop at the next station.
I'm staying.
You sure about that?
I'm positive.
And she is not alone. A lot of people are staying here in Virginia Beach. They say they've been through this before, and I was actually talking to some lifers, people who have lived here their entire lives. Over on the other side, one man owned a Greek pizza shop. He actually was telling me in broken English, I could barely tell what he was saying, but he was saying, stay hotels, stay in the hotels. And of course, that meant to me, and I said, well, I am. And he said, that's good, because he knows that Hurricane Irene is going to be like those other names he has on the boards on his windows. Reporting live in Virginia Beach, I'm Ann McNamara. Back to you guys.
All right, and it looks like a lot of people in Virginia Beach are taking this storm very seriously, as they should.
All right, we're going to go to Melanie Woodrow right now, who has been standing by in Norfolk, and not a lot going on out there, except for the fact we've just wrapped up a news conference.
Yeah, we did just have a news conference with a lot of local officials as well as Governor McDonnell, who called this potentially the most catastrophic weather event that you will experience in your lifetime. Coming up next, you'll hear from Mayor Frame what he wants residents across Hampton Roads to know.
Our coverage of Hurricane Irene continues on WAVY News 10 at 5. We've talked a lot about the Outer Banks and Virginia Beach being in the line of this storm, and now we're hearing more and more about Norfolk.
Governor Bob McDonnell is already in Norfolk right now, and so is Melanie Woodrow. You were there when the governor explained to us this really could be a catastrophic event, Melanie.
Yeah, I want to read to you. Governor McDonnell's quote was, "This could be the most catastrophic weather event that you have experienced in your lifetime," referring, of course, to Virginia residents. Right now, they're talking about a mandatory evacuation for up to 100,000 residents across Hampton Roads. I'm joined now by Mayor Paul Frame, who is obviously very familiar with what Norfolk residents could be looking at here. Mayor Frame, talk to me about some of the shelters that have been set up at this point.
Well, we have opened at 6 o'clock this evening. We're going to open 6 shelters across the city. 3 of our high schools at Granby, Norview, at Maury, at Lake Taylor Middle School, Campusdale Elementary, and then, of course, Bayview Recreation Center. We were at the Senior Center, but we moved it to the Bayview Recreation Center. That will open up at 6 this evening.
I think one of the most critical points that's come up here today has been that folks that have been through this before that think maybe they can stick it out, they're familiar with this, they're maybe sandbagging and they're just going to ride it out. The issue really is that if you're surrounded by streets that do flood and something happens, first responders will not be able to get to you, and you should not count on them to do so.
Right. This is a very serious event, unlike anything that we've seen in modern times. We've issued a mandatory evacuation call for the low-lying areas in Norfolk. I don't remember doing that. I mean, we don't do things like that lightly. And so you have to pay attention for your own safety. At a point in time, the city manager is going to pull all of the public safety officials, the police, our fire rescue folks off the street for their protection. We will not be able to come get you after that. And so, right now is the time to get serious about leaving.
I think there was some confusion as to what a low-lying area is. A lot of people were confused by the maps that were up on the city website. The city website at one point today was hard to navigate. Bob Batcher, communications specialist, I thought said it best, which is that if you live in an area that has flooded in the past, you will flood again. And if you're not sure, ask your neighbor.
Well, that's exactly right. I think we've corrected some of the maps already. One thing we try to do, and we've been doing constantly, is communicating with the public through any sort of social media events, as well as going door to door even in the low-lying areas that we've required the people to evacuate, and then press conferences like this, trying to get out the word that this is a very special moment in the history of this city and people have to take it seriously.
And I heard you guys saying today people should really think about what they need to do tonight and get out by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, this storm is moving quickly in our direction, faster than we thought. We had actually at one point suggested that people be out of their homes by 8 in the morning. We think that's too late now. They've got to move sooner than that.
All right, and just finally I want to ask you, there are 4 parking garages as well.
Yeah, in downtown we've opened up the parking garages. You can bring your car, park in any of the garages for free, and they'll be safe.
All right, thanks so much, Mayor Frame. So just learning new details here live on the air. You're hearing it as I'm hearing it. They had just said during this press conference by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Mayor Frame now saying 8 o'clock in the morning may be too late to try to get out sooner than that. Guys?
So if you're going to leave tonight. That's probably the best bet. Thanks a lot, Melanie.
That's what we're hearing. Thanks.
All right, our coverage of Hurricane Irene continues after this.
Welcome back to our continuing special coverage of Hurricane Irene. A lot of people are really wanting to know what's going on with this storm, so they're turning to social media.
That's right. Facebook, Twitter. Our Nicole Livas is plugged in too. She has got your questions. And Nicole, what are people asking?
Oh my goodness, people are asking questions, they're posting comments. I think the main question right now, people want to know when, because it seems like it's changing. We're going to see this a little bit sooner in our area. For example, Don, someone in Edenton, North Carolina said she's been seeing rain off and on, kind of heavy downpours. Is that part of what we can expect?
Sure, it is part of what we can expect for the Edenton area, or really anywhere within the area, as what goes on is on the outer edges of this. We're seeing rain reach all the way on up into here, but on the outer fringes of it, we're seeing these little tiny bands that could reach on up and produce some very, very heavy rain and some wind with it. They tend to carry down some wind from the upper atmosphere, but when do things get worse? You can see it'll really get worse. Anywhere to the north of the storm by 2 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, this is really going to be reaching all the way through southeastern Virginia. I didn't draw it very well. But again, the good news about all of this is Saturday afternoon, it's got 85-mile-an-hour winds. Earlier, we were looking at 100-mile-an-hour winds, so that's a significant downgrade of the storm. Right now, it's got 100-mile-an-hour winds, moving to the north at 12, but it's way on down into here. From there on in, offshore of Chincoteague at 2 o'clock in the morning, 80-mile-an-hour winds. So this is a faster movement of the storm.
Okay, and someone wants to know what kind of damage could 21 hours of sustained winds cause to a structure, to a house?
Well, it depends on the strength of the wind. Well, that's the thing about it. Again, it's got 90-mile-an-hour winds by 2 o'clock in the morning tonight, late at night, and then after that, it drops down to 85-mile-an-hour winds. But this is mainly going to be to the north and the east of the storm. Now, that can do certainly some damage, structural damage, minor structural exterior damage across the Outer Banks, and obviously, if the waves are coming up, that can certainly do some damage throughout the area as well. But then farther northward from there, I think we're going to see less wind. We'll see some strong winds at the ocean front, certainly right on down through here, the Corolla Corova area, and on up toward Back Bay and Sandbridge. And then finally farther inland, it'll be tropical storm force winds well inland.
Don, we have some folks from Franklin really concerned after what they've seen with Floyd and other incidents. They want to know, what can they expect this time? Heavy rain.
Now, so far, it does not look like the Franklin area. Franklin area is right here, the little dot that you can kind of see in between things. What happens with this is that we'll likely see some very heavy rain throughout the entire area, perhaps a foot of rain. However, so far it looks like it'll be moderate tidal flooding at the Blackwater River, and the tidal, or not the tide, but the river will start to reach flood stage Sunday afternoon around the noon hour, and then maybe some moderate flooding. That's the current thinking, moderate flooding, but you can handle that, especially the way things are built up right now in Franklin. Moderate river flooding by about Monday afternoon at around noon, 1 o'clock. So again, not certainly as bad as Floyd, but we are going to see heavy rain, a lot of wind through the area.
Okay, thank you, Don, and thank you for sending in your questions. Continue to look at our Facebook page, WAVY TV 10. Somebody may have already answered your question, so be sure to scroll through the comments there, and we'll be right back.